Hi, I'm Shannon with Mental Health Louisville, and today we have Elizabeth Roberts with us. She's a licensed professional clinical counselor and a certified clinical trauma professional. She's in private practice in Louisville, Kentucky, and that practice is called Serenity Now with Elizabeth Roberts. She does individual teletherapy sessions with adolescents and with adults, and she specializes in crisis intervention, suicide bereavement, trauma, anxiety, and depression. She sees online counseling clients throughout the entire state of Kentucky, offers the first session for free, and works on a sliding scale with her clients. If you want to learn more about her and her practice, you can just Google her name, or you can go to serenitynow2020.com. But thank you, Elizabeth, for being with us today to answer one of our questions that were sent in by one of our audience members. Just a reminder to everyone, this is our Ask Us Anything series. These are questions that are answered by mental health and wellness professionals in the field, usually local to Kentucky, and they're answering your guys' questions. So if you have questions, just go ahead and DM us, and we will do our best to find the best professional to answer that question. But again, thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
The question that came in, and we thought that you would be a really good professional answer. The question is in regards to COVID and grieving and loss. And so this individual's question was, I lost someone to COVID during summer of 2020, and I grieved a lot in isolation and while physically distancing, etc. But now that things are back open and back to normal, I'm not quite sure how to grieve, and I feel like it's kind of hitting me all over again. What do I do?
Well, first off, I'm so sorry for your loss. It's it's hard to lose anyone close to you ever. In the past year, I think there have been so many personal losses and public losses and global losses that it's just been so complicated by COVID. I think that there's a lot of expected things that you go through in grieving. There's the feeling like your life is never going to be the same, not knowing how you're going to go on. Sometimes not knowing if you want to go on. A lot of complicated feelings involved there. But since COVID, I think there's a lot of unexpected aspects of it as well. Not being able to be with people physically, not being able to participate in traditional rituals like funerals, not being able to have everyone there at the funeral. Just not being able to have a physical shoulder to cry on or a hand to hold. The effects of that we're still seeing. It's taking people a long time to get through these kind of losses. Going back to the expected feelings there, if this was last summer, you're coming up on a year with this loss, so that anniversary is just going to be really difficult. And it makes sense too that other people in your life maybe had a hard time processing that loss as well. It was different for them than it was for you. And maybe now that things are opening back up and you can see people again, it feels new to them when you've been suffering with it for a whole year.
Sure.
So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, kind of impacted with like the weight of everything else and the world and our year all compounded, and then coming back out, and maybe seeing people that, well, maybe you haven't seen the whole entire COVID time or since the loss, and whether that's brought up in conversation or just kind of brought up in the ways of things we used to do maybe with that individual that we lost, and just kind of again, like they said, kind of hitting them all over again.
And I can see too that, when you're stuck at home, maybe it doesn't hit you in all these aspects. As soon as you leave your house and start doing things again, like you said, you're going to remember that person a lot more, the places that you went to with them, the things you did with them. So it's all coming back now, and it's complicated because you've been feeling this for a whole year. I think it's, a lot of people are feeling this. It's such a prolonged grief that in some cases it can feel like PTSD, that it's something that's been with you for so long that you're just numb. You're just, just surviving. So it's definitely a hard thing to go through.
Yeah. And I know kind of the common question that a lot of therapists receive in regards to a lot of things is like, well, what do I do? Like, Cool, got the awareness, got all these feelings, but like, what do I do with them? Do you have any kind of common things that seem to be most helpful in the grief and loss phase of people's lives?
Well, separate from COVID, I think that most helpful thing is just to let it come as it comes. I think sometimes we feel so uncomfortable with that pain. We want to get rid of it as quickly as possible. We try to push it away, deny it. We're out in public. We don't want to break down and start crying. But when it hits you, it's there for a reason. I think you have to just let it come, and if you have to deal with some awkward glances or people asking you what's wrong, maybe it's better to just let that play out than to try to control it, because I think holding on to that, trying to control it so much is what makes it even more complicated.
Sure.
So that's one thing I would suggest. Um, Another is getting a lot of support. It seems like it goes without saying, but since things are opening back up now, people have more opportunities for support. Reach out to friends, family, support groups, mental health professionals, crisis hotlines, spiritual leaders, neighbors, your postman, whoever could be a support for you, whoever you could talk to for a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think with a lot of things mental wellness related of like normalizing that it's not always a linear kind of upward tracking
Oh yeah.
space and that it's always ebbing and flowing and there's really I don't want to say any right or wrong way to do anything, but like in the ways of healing or grieving, like there's no right or wrong way of doing it. And just kind of, yeah, I guess like normalizing that process.
That's what I tell clients as well, that it'd be nice if there were a handbook for how to do this, but there's just not. And even though theories have told us in the past that there's a progression of symptoms and eventually you get to acceptance, I think you go back and forth. There's times where you're going to feel like I'm okay with this, I'm past it, and then the next day you're crying uncontrollably, and just because the simple fact of it, your life has changed. It will never be the way it was. And that is something to grieve right there, that colossal change.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And that's a great point that it's like there's so many, I don't know the appropriate terminology, but kind of like sub losses that come from maybe a larger loss. And there's just so many differences that happen in transitions internally, but also externally in our life that like we do kind of re-experience that loss over and over again.
Yeah. And I think too, since COVID, a lot of people have been experiencing some guilt, survivor's guilt.
Yeah.
Why them and not me? Especially since COVID has been such a complicated and confusing thing. We don't understand why some people have gotten it and others haven't, why some people have survived it and others haven't. Um, so there can be a lot of that feeling like it should have been me. They were so much better. I think, something that, this person can do is try not to blame yourself, and this is something way beyond any of our control. And, there's no sense in beating yourself up any more than you already have.
Hmm. Yeah. And just creating space, like you said earlier, for those feelings and experiences and sensations to be there and leaning on support, you know, um, when needed. And sometimes it's needed a lot.
Yeah. Another thing that I think can be helpful is practicing some mindfulness, grounding exercises for those moments where you're so caught up in it and you just can't get through what you're doing. There's some simple techniques that can just bring you back to the moment and help you to get a little bit of control over the situation. I know it may sound, um, it's such cliche, deep breathing. Um, it really is something I think, if it's something you can practice when you're not in a active crisis, when you're not crying uncontrollably, practice it, a little bit every day. It helps you to, for it to kick in when you need it. Um,
Mhm.
that kind of slows things down. I mean, just biologically, it helps you to get more oxygen to your brain, which gives you more control over the situation.
Yeah.
Um, you can also, like I said, grounding exercises. I sometimes use a worry stone a little, stone that I can, hold on to, focus on the texture of it, the feeling of it, the coolness of it,
Mhm.
just this object that brings me back to the moment, that tells me that even though, things feel like they're falling apart, I'm here right now. It's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a great space to point out that like grounding exercises or mindfulness based activities, meditation are not to like fuel and like push away these things, like, but to like bring us back into the moment or like connect with these things inside of us through our breath or
Mhm.
through a guided meditation or something like that to really be able to be more present with whatever it may be that's kind of flared up inside of us.
Yeah, and it's not to say that you're pushing away the feeling. It's just helping you to get through it in the moment. So again, it's not something out of your control. And for people who say, "Well, I don't know what I would use for a grounding technique," I mean, it can literally be anything. Tell people sometimes describe a fixture in your room. To
Mhm.
tell me about a fan or a light, or do you have something on your desk, or tell me about your phone. Whatever it is, just describe it to me, tell me all about it. The more you can use the your senses, what you see, hear, taste, touch, and smell, the
Mhm.
more it gets you out of that emotional mindset and helps to give you some control.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Well, is there anything else you'd like to leave our audience with before kind of signing off today?
Just again, the importance of reaching out for some support. I think the fact that that this person who posted the question reached out here was wonderful. But continue to reach out for support. If you feel like you don't have anyone else to talk to, and some people, don't have anyone else to really lean on, there's always a crisis hotline or suicide hotline for support. Those are free, confidential, 24/7 resources. The local crisis hotline as 7 counties crisis and information center, 502-589-4313. And the local suicide hotline number is 1-800-273-TALK.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. And guys, everyone remember, send us your questions if you have any. We're here to answer them and to assist in any way we can for the Louisville community and the mental wellness um, kind of umbrella. So yeah, send us your questions if you have any. But thanks so much, Elizabeth.
Thank you.